Thanks for joining us. You could be doing so many things this afternoon, but you've chosen to be with us on this beautiful day, and we're just so glad you're here. Whether you're joining us live or on the recording, it's obvious that you care about your team. My name is Mike Wright.
And I'm Mallory Wright, and we're here from Ledge Leadership. We know that being part of a team can be incredibly rewarding, but also very challenging, particularly in times of uncertainty and change like we've been experiencing. Individuals and teams can struggle to connect with each other and accomplish their goals.
Yeah, we put this presentation together as a way to support you and to offer some practical ways that your team can really move to new levels of effectiveness and enjoyment as you engage in your workplace, because it's also about wanting to be there. Mm-hmm. Today, we have a wide variety of leaders from municipalities, community organizations, health and education sectors. We have local churches, not-for-profits, charities, so it's great to have all of you with us.
Yes, and we invite you to open the chat if you haven't already. You'll see the chat function at the bottom of your screen, and you can use that area to introduce yourself and your organization and make comments during the presentation as well. I want to make sure that your comments are being sent to panelists and attendees so that everyone has the chance to interact with you. You might have to switch your settings a little bit there. Also, if you have questions, please add them to the Q&A, and you'll also find the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. The chat and the Q&A are being monitored throughout the time, and everything added to either of those areas will be seen by the organizers.
Yeah, and our plan today is to finish by 1:30, so just 30 minutes. And if you need to leave at that point, that's great. But if you want to stick around, we're going to answer some questions at that point following the presentation.
Before we go any further, we invite you to take a moment to consider your position in the land where you find yourself today. We come together from many different locations today across Turtle Island and recognize First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. In particular, I'm grateful for the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat people who moved throughout the Blue Mountains area where we now live. And this area is located within the boundary of Treaty 18 of 18. Our hope today, as I say those words, is that this moment will be more than just the way everyone expects to start a meeting, that it will represent actually a commitment to ongoing conversation, learning, and to change.
For sure, and at Ledge, we are convinced that teams that share power will change the world. And teams like that are dream teams. Some of us get to work with our dream team. You love the people that are around the table and you love to do the work together. You just can't get almost enough of your team. However, for many of you, hey, you have not found your dream team yet, where you are known, valued, respected, where your team is committed to reaching and achieving a shared mission. In other words, your team isn't that place where relationship and mission are the top priorities. The Ledge team is my dream team, and I'm just so privileged to have that. We've spent a lot of time and energy learning how to work more effectively together, and we really enjoy the dynamics of our team, and we have all sorts of different people on our team. We want to bring those learnings to your team to help you reach new heights of connection, clarity, and commitment. At the end of our time together, we're going to share some more information also about our extended learning opportunities through our leadership ReEngage certificate series of learning labs, and also about our team coaching and individual coaching as well. So this year has been a roller coaster and pushed us all to new forms of work and survival. The impact of COVID-19 on our teams has been more than significant. Whether you've been working full-time or part-time from home, whether you're either looking for or actually dreading coming back into the office or the workplace.
It could go either way,
it could go either way. The reality is that all of us have had to work differently for a year now and have developed some helpful and in some cases really annoying habits. I know Mallory has some annoying habits.
What?
Oh, that's crazy.
Hey.
Coming back together in person may take some time depending on the restrictions you're experiencing in your area with COVID-19, but no matter how long it takes to get you all back around the table, it's going to bring more challenges, we think, than you realize.
Right. And then even we're aware of sometimes, I mean, after a year of connecting virtually, we've gotten used to some unique patterns of behavior, and we've actually experienced situations that we would never have imagined being.
You guys make coffee yet?
We're in the middle of a live presentation.
This is
that's today.
That's
yeah.
My bad.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
And
Oh, my word.
So unprofessional. Goodness. What, I don't know if you've experienced virtual situations that have been unusual, but as we share workspace with our partners and children of all ages doing school from home, strange things and
We have that.
unexpected things can happen. So if you've experienced, maybe you've experienced something unusual yourself, feel free to add those kind of situations to the chat, then we won't feel so alone.
One thing, though, we've been able to control our own participation. So virtually, you can turn off your cameras. And when you turn off your cameras, I know people that have gone off and had a nap, come back refreshed. Some people have turned off their camera and gotten made supper, got things ready for the kids. Turn off your camera, you go to the washroom, you really do anything you really want to. You can just disappear.
What are you doing? What?
And then you can come back with a freshly made coffee. It's absolutely amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Many of us have also gotten used to our furry companions interrupting our meetings and interrupting the meetings for our coworkers. I actually love those moments when all of a sudden animals appear on the screen with people. But that's something we've never experienced and would never experience for the most part in our workplaces.
For sure. I mean, I've spoken with many leaders who just want things to get back to normal. And most of the time when I'm in conversation with them, I just smile because normal doesn't exist anymore. Bringing people back effectively in person is going to require us to resist the temptation to just move forward without actually dealing with the realities of the past year. But the best kind of leaders, the best leaders know that dealing with the past allows us to move into the future with clarity and commitment. So we're going to dive in here to the 6 keys to re-engage your team back in the workplace. Some of these ideas and practices require that you take some time to process the past. We would suggest that the best way to implement these 6 keys is really create a special meeting. But if you don't have a morning or an afternoon to dedicate to this, just take your upcoming few meetings and include 1 or 2 of these ideas, and you'll get them in. The point is, all of these keys are critical to your team moving forward together, to work more effectively and to have team members who really want to be there. So for each key, we're going to give you an action step. These action steps are questions you can use to actually guide the conversation. So the first key is rewind your virtual story. The goal is to build your story of how your workplace was impacted by COVID-19 over this past year. I mean, the pandemic has been a navigational challenge for all of us. Our organization has had to make significant decisions and critical changes have had to be made, and it's felt very stormy at times. One thing for us is that we are actually a sailing family and we've weathered many storms on Georgian Bay. And it seems strange to kind of articulate this out loud, but I really love reading books about disasters at sea. It's not funny, it's true.
It's true. It's
The
true.
life and death accounts of sailors caught in unbelievable conditions on the water. Some of them are tragic and some of them are inspirational. One of my favorite things to do is to actually go on solo sails myself for a few days. And in some cases, I've encountered significant storms. Several years back, I was returning solo back into our harbor in a storm that continued to build. And as it was building, it was getting darker. The rain was getting torrential. By the time I hit the harbor, the winds were so high and the waves were so enormous that to safely enter the harbor, I had to just fly in under full sail. I remember thinking at the time, this is the most challenging weather I have ever experienced in my life. And there's no room for error here. There is no room. Thankfully, several friends saw this happening, rushed to our dock and helped me safely dock the boat. But to this day, at meetings, at all sorts of celebrations, people bring up this story about the time that Mike sailed into the harbor in the midst of this crazy storm in the darkness. It's my disaster at sea survival story. Highlighting the stories of what you've weathered as an organization this year is your chance to celebrate what you've accomplished as a team because you've survived.
And that is something we're celebrating.
No, it's amazing.
Huge
Many
accomplishment.
organizations have not survived. So the first action step is to share your organization's story, one person at a time. Ask each team member to respond to this question. What is one way your organization shifted and changed to navigate the challenges of the pandemic? And you may need to go around a second time or even a third time till you uncover the details that are important to your organization. But remember, this is your disaster at sea survival story. So remember and celebrate, do it justice. People need to be given space to share. So don't rush through it. It's an essential element to really creating a team that can talk and work and actually enjoy being together. So write them down, record some of the highlights, maybe keep a permanent record of your journey as an organization because you've survived.
The second key to re-engaging is to reacquaint with your team members. So the goal here is to review how your team members have changed and also stayed the same. So the first key focused on how your organization has changed and had to adapt. The second key involves creating space for each team member so that they consider, and you can consider together, how they've grown, developed, and adapted, and also to consider areas and details of their lives that may have remained the same. Because for so many of us, this pandemic has shifted our priorities, and being able to share our story with each other will deepen that connection.
For sure. And I mean, even as a family, we've had so many different priorities and changes that we've just had to deal with.
For sure. So the second action is to share your story one at a time. Ask each team member to respond to this question. What insights have you learned about yourself personally and professionally during the pandemic? So for me, on a personal level, I became an essential caregiver for my mother, and she lives in a retirement home. We realized that she needed extra support during phone-in doctor's appointments and also with administrative details, helping her to manage those. And so now I'm thinking personally about life differently.
For sure.
We're thinking about it differently as a family, and I have this increased sense of responsibility and time commitment related to her. And then on the other hand, on a professional level, I've been reminded of how important it is for me to keep learning new information. During the pandemic, I've read a lot and participated in many webinars.
Sorry, I'm just laughing because Mallory has taken in more webinars than I can imagine.
I love webinars. And I want to share what I've been learning with the teams I work with. And so as you think about your team members may have had personal factors that have changed in their lives too, as well as those professional insights that would be so helpful for your team to understand. So this is another time in the process where you may end up going around more than one time so that people can really share their story completely.
Yeah, but by engaging in the first two actions, you're doing something very significant. You're practicing intentional connection. So for some of you, this is really going to push you because you will question, is this worth it? Are we just wasting our time here? What are we really accomplishing?
We need to get to the business.
We need to get to the real business. You might want to rush it because you don't feel comfortable with it. So don't assume everyone is uncomfortable with it. They may be feeling like this is the first time I've actually been able to share some of the challenges that I've been facing.
That's a good point.
But intentional connection helps team members be known and understood. And the reality is that you bring all of yourself to every meeting you attend or lead, your stress, your struggles, your achievements. ReEngage works with teams to help them develop consistent practices that keep their teammates tracking together. We're offering a free 15-minute consultation if you want to chat with us about what your team is experiencing, because you might need just the time to talk about that. Just put yes in the chat and we will contact you. We are often working with management and executive teams that need a fresh perspective and just simply new practices from outside the team. Linda, one of our team members, has built her career on understanding how significant relationship is to a team accomplishing its mission. She has been amazing and has really helped transform our team.
Really has.
So the third key is to realign the team's mission. This is a perfect time in the life of your team to review, understand, and interact with your mission. And your mission may be the same as the mission of the overall organization. Or you may have a mission that's unique and specific to your team. Many of our organizations have gone through a lengthy process to craft their mission statements. Get it perfect, wordsmith it into the ground. But once they're developed, they leave them on the shelf or bury them deep in their websites. It's likely, if you were tested, that many of you don't know or remember the mission of your organization or your team right now. But let's face it, the mission of all of our teams over the last year has been to survive the pandemic. That has been a global mission. And this has caused us to sail in many different directions. Now is a great time to kind of trim the sails and bring your team back on course. So the third action you can take to start this is to present the current mission of your team. Ask each team member to respond to this question. Is the mission still relevant and vital to us? Some of you might say quickly, it's not. And obviously, this needs one of you to take lead and walk your team through the identified mission, discuss it, and then put it up against what you've learned over this past year. You may realize that your current mission is still relevant. On the other hand, you may end up completely reimagining your mission, and that's okay. If that's the case, you'll just need to prioritize more time to dig deeper into that piece of your time together and work on your mission. I know Ledge right now, we're in the midst of just, again, reimagining our mission and working on our guiding principles. And we're going through a process right now. So we're right into this.
And it's intense. I mean, this is something we've realized it's important to keep doing on a regular basis. And so it helps us to develop that sense of clarity together as a team. The fourth key we want to share with you is to recalibrate the team's work. And the goal of this key will be to review how your team accomplishes their work and stays accountable to the team, both those pieces. So during this past year, teams have changed, so many changes. So you may have had people retire, move on to new positions. You may have new staff members, new volunteer members join you, right? And other members from other parts of your organization may all of a sudden be part of your team now. You may be the one who's experienced the change because you're the one who's shifted to a completely different team. At Ledge, we've had new members join our shared leadership team, which is Ledge's operational team. Amanda and Corbin, right? They've added such great new perspective and energy to the work we're doing. So it's been fantastic during this time period to have new people add to that team and become part of our team. The other thing for us is at the beginning of the pandemic, we shifted to doing 2 virtual meetings every week.
Yeah, that was a big change.
That was a big change, a big commitment. Now we've returned to our usual 1 meeting per week. However, normally some of those meetings, at least some of them, would be in person, and we're not doing that yet. And so as a result, this new configuration of our team with these 2 team members has yet to meet in person. I mean, I'm sure lots of you can resonate with that.
Totally.
You know, all of us have established different patterns of how we complete our work. And in some cases, we've maybe been working more independently from the team than we normally would. If you're a new staff or a new team member, you may not have been in person together yet. And we have no framework then, if we're new, to how the team typically functions.
And that's pretty weird when you think about it, to join a team and for almost a year, you've never been in person.
Not actually see each other face to face in that way, except through screen. So our fourth action then is to have an open discussion about how the team manages projects and reaches goals. So here we're going to ask each team member to respond to this question. What information do you need in order to be clear about your role and how you complete your work? So your team may have questions like, can I work at home part-time?
Or do I wear shoes to the office?
Yeah, probably
I actually
you
put
do.
on sandals today.
Nice. How often will we be meeting? How long are the meetings going to be? Are some of our meetings still going to be virtual, even though we might be back in the office or back in the office part of the time? So assuming that everyone, whether you have new or long-term staff, assuming that everybody is up to speed about the expectations can really hurt the team's ability to accomplish work and reach deadlines. So essentially, this is a conversation about clarity. So everyone needs to know what the team expects from them and then how they're going to accomplish that work both individually and together.
So the first 2 keys gave you ways to connect. The next 2 keys involve actions to help your team develop clarity around your work together. And the last 2 keys focus around increasing your team's commitment. So the 5th key is to reestablish team buy-in. The goal is to review how your team makes decisions and deals with personal and professional differences. Moving forward on actions with team buy-in is critical. How many of us have been in meetings where people say yes to decisions, but their actions and conversations away from the team demonstrate clearly, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that they did not agree or felt that they couldn't talk about their disagreement? Over the years, I've been a part of many teams and some not so great teams. One of the most challenging kinds of person that I've encountered around the table is someone who is all smiles, encouragement, positive vibes, you know, really there, and seems to agree with all the decisions of the team. But in reality, they actually disagree with most of the decisions. And I found out about that indirectly, that they've actually disagreed. And I found out from people outside the team that they actually didn't buy into the decision that we were talking through and working through.
Which is so discouraging.
I know,
right?
it's-
Especially when you take a lot of time to work through decisions. together.
Well, and it caused me to ask these questions. Why are they not able to share their real thoughts and feelings? Some of us find that more difficult because we're introverted, extroverted, but the context, what's happening in the room, the
Right.
space, is it safe? Why are they having to process their struggles with people outside of the team? Those are hard questions to ask yourself. But to increase and maintain the healthier team, everyone needs to be on the same page. And how you navigate these differences, because these unspoken or misunderstood differences are the things that lead to conflicts.
We're wondering if anyone else that's listening today has experienced a situation like this. Maybe a time where you thought the team was on the same page and then you were surprised when you found out that some people actually weren't. Feel free to let us know that in the chat without, of course, mentioning any names. Let us know. Have you ever been in that place too?
That's a good
No
point.
names.
No names, please. This is not about names. So the fifth action is to discuss the current ways your team makes decisions and works through differences. Ask each team member to respond to this question. What would make it easier for our team to express differences or disagreement about ideas? So for example, you might find people saying, we need to work to not interrupt each other. We need to defer judgment or just listen more. We need sometimes brainstorming, or those times when you're classifying them as creative moments are chaos. So maybe you need to develop some team practices around brainstorming or just choosing ideas. Even just intentionally asking each person to share their view of an idea is something that might come up.
Right.
Whether or not you have a process for dealing with differences, most teams struggle with handling differences. I've heard many leaders say, I've heard people close to me say statements like, I hate conflict.
I hate conflict.
Or I'm not a person that really likes to deal with conflict. But you know what that means? It's just you're a terrible leader.
What?
No, I'm just kidding. It means you are a normal person because no one loves conflict. Not even you, Melanie.
Not even me, that's for sure.
People have a lot of fear about dealing with differences, and I've discovered from those people that I've spent time on teams with that don't share their thoughts, but often share them outside the team, is that they're insecure and they have fear around sharing and being real about their ideas. ReEngage works with teams to help reduce those fears by adopting some simple practices to effectively deal with differences.
Talk through those differences and have your team be a safe place where you can work through whatever you need to work through. Our final key then is to recap those team practices. So our goal here is to review the practices that will keep your team functioning well. So as your team works through those first 5 keys, you'll have a chance to do a lot of different things together. You'll have a chance to reflect on the story of your organization and also hear each other's stories and connect in that way. You'll have spent time then talking about your team mission and practices that everyone needs to be aware of. And you've also you will take some time to think about how you want to have those conversations that are more challenging. So some of that information may be new to some of you, or some of that information might be new to actually all of you on the team, but you don't actually have to reimagine every single thing about your team. We're not suggesting that. You probably have some past team practices and rhythms that have been really helpful and will continue to be helpful for your team. If you do come up with some new practices, they will take time to integrate into your team life, and you'll need a way to remind yourself about those new ways of functioning together until they do become habits for everybody on the team. The final action that will help you with this then is to talk about and agree to those routines and patterns for your team. As a team now, you're going to answer this question: what practices do we want to keep, drop, shift, or add? And so this will be a bit of a brainstorming session. I mean, for example, you could decide we want to continue meeting once a week. We have to do that. And we're going to keep doing that Monday afternoons because that's a great time for everyone. But
Well, I was just thinking too, is that you might find yourself thinking about dropping a lot of things.
Right. Drop. No.
And because you might have new team members on your team, they may have no history or backdrop or connection to those practices.
To those practices.
So there may be some that you don't want to drop. You want to reignite the team with those.
And they're worth holding on to. So that once a week meeting, but what we're going to shift in it is maybe only one time in person during the month. And then the rest of the times we're going to retain those virtual meetings.
No more virtual.
During decision-making processes, we're going to, and times of decision and differences even, we're going to make sure we hear from each person before we finalize any decision. I mean, those of your teammates who are extroverts, they will probably very willingly and easily share what they're thinking, share their thought processes. But if you have people that are introverted on your team, giving them space to kind of think that through a little bit and think things through, and also inviting them to participate and to give their ideas is really important. So that decision to maybe add in hearing from each person might be a new thing for you as a team.
Or even because our teams are made up of introverts, extroverts, those that process in the minute by talking constantly, and those that sit and need to reflect, perhaps you just need to take some time and send those things in advance to them. Send the 6 questions to them in advance and let them begin to process those before the meeting.
That's a really good point. And then as you're having that discussion, having someone record those ideas, that might be obvious. You might already do this, but whether you have a chart or something like that, a way of recording and collecting those ideas so that you can prioritize them and revisit them will be really helpful. And so as you develop this list of practices in just one place, it'll ensure that you have clarity as a team and also the opportunity to commit as individuals to those team practices moving forward.
Yeah. Okay, so just to summarize, there are 6 keys. The first 2 keys were rewind your virtual story, create and celebrate your survival story because you have one. And the second key was reacquaint with team members. Even though you've seen them from time to time, people have changed. Recognize how each of you have changed.
The number 3 key, realign the team's mission so that you can gather people around that mission and recalibrate your team's work. Recalibrate the team's work, make work expectations clear.
Finally, the last 2 really are about making commitment clear. Establish team buy-in. Create buy-in by forming practices around the tough stuff, decisions and differences. They are difficult. And lastly, recap team practices. Don't forget long-established practices that everyone needs to know and that just may simply need updating. If you make space to walk your team through this kind of content, you will connect more closely as a team. You'll be able to move forward with greater clarity and commitment. It may prove really to be one of the most inspiring, inspirational, connected meetings this year, or maybe ever. Remember that we're offering 15-minute free consultation if you want to chat with us about what your team is experiencing. Just put yes in the chat and we will follow up with you. We know that being a part of the team is both rewarding and challenging. We would love the opportunity to work with you to raise your team's effectiveness and overall enjoyment. Ledge also provides coaching to expand your personal development. And after we're live here, we'll be sending you the recorded version of our presentation that you can share with friends, coworkers, anybody who wants a good laugh, maybe, along with links to other learning opportunities that our Ledge offers through our Leadership Reimagined series of learning labs. So thank you for joining us today. It's been great to have you. Now we're going to move to Q&A time. So if you're heading off, thanks for being here. We'll just take a second.
We'll take a moment and take a look at some of the questions that have come in.
Okay, the first question is for Mallory specifically. How do you get people more engaged in discussion? They asked Mallory to
Did they? Oh, they asked Mallory
No, they didn't ask
specifically. I don't think so. I think one way to have people get more engaged in discussion is to provide that space for people to think before they have to speak. Whether a person is extroverted or introverted, it's really helpful to have just a moment to think on your own and be able to process whether before the meeting or even during the meeting as questions come up. So that would be one piece of advice I would have.
Yeah, no, and I mean, this comes up a lot. You may have a team where you're trying to discuss something, you're trying to dig deeper into something, and you just don't get response from your team. They just stare at you, or there's a couple that just dominate the conversation. A great practice is just to make it normal that everyone responds. or at certain times you want to hear from everybody in the room. So you can say that. The next question I want everyone to respond to. And so, Sarah, we're going to start with you, but we'll give everybody a minute or so just to think about this. And Sarah, when you're ready, just start, and then move around the table. Talk about that. It's a great way to get actually everyone's input into the discussion.
I think another question that came through is, what is one of the biggest challenges that we've experienced, that Ledge has experienced during this past year?
Just one.
We love, I mean, there's lots of things that we
Just
are
one.
experiencing and working through. We love being face to face, as in the same room with people, and being able to connect with people, whether it's a small group, whether it's a large group, and that interaction, that speaking with them, seeing facial expressions, people being able to raise their hand actually to ask a question in this kind of a format.
Yeah.
And so we've really missed that. So we've missed the in-person part of our engagements with people. And so that's been something that we've had to,
that's been hard. It's been hard to shift everything virtually and to recognize how used we're getting to just not being around people.
Right.
I mean, Mallory has to spend so much time with me, poor girl.
But it's also been rewarding, and I've come to appreciate formats like this and Zoom meetings even. I know we've probably all done lots of them, but I do appreciate those moments of at least being able to see people's faces, expressions, and being able to connect with them in that way. That's been very valuable. Yeah,
and similar to your organization, we are experiencing financial challenges. You're also experiencing challenges of direction, where to go from here. When do we come back together? How do we come back together? We're also working through the challenges of simply plans we had before and then now. So we were moving towards significant development on our property, and that just came to a bit of a halt, but yet we still want to consider those things as we move forward. So it's changing some of those plans. What else do we have? We've been asked to speak a little bit more to how do you actually create that atmosphere where it is safe for people to share their stories, share their ideas. And as I look at that question, I think somebody has to take the lead on it, I think. And so sure, as one of you on the team is willing to, and it may be you, if you're the person who is taking the lead on that particular meeting, chairing that meeting, however you're organized, you being the one who's willing to share your story first can help people then know that, wow, people actually do care. And I have someone in this room who's sharing a story, and maybe I relate to it. And so it makes it more comfortable for others to start sharing too. Well, and I think atmosphere is a good word. Whoever wrote that question, that's a great word, because you are trying to create an atmosphere, a space, a vibe in a room or a place where it's free from certain things. And it's very common for teams to have certain members who just roll their eyes immediately, or they just let out things like, oh, you've said something that they've heard 100 times before, and you're bringing it up again. They make audible sounds, physical reactions, and it can feel very much like a hostile environment to really start to create an atmosphere. So in some cases, there's just very simple things you may need to do. And that is just identify some of those things in the room that happen from our team as a starting point, not that specific individual, but from our team, and we don't want them happening anymore. The space is free from these 4 things. Right. Just an idea. Could set those kind of ideas. I think that may be the end of the questions for now, but we're also happy to continue thinking through questions with you. You may have something else that comes to mind as maybe you watch the recording or as you continue to ponder these ideas. And so we'd be happy to have that conversation with you in the future. So we do want to wish you and your team success as you move forward and you re-engage together, and just remind you to look in your email for a link for today's presentation that you can share with other people. We'll leave the webinar open just for a few more minutes. There may be a last minute question that comes in, or if you're interested in that free 15-minute consultation appointment, remember to type yes in the chat and we'll definitely be in contact with you. Thanks for being here. Great to be together. Thanks. Bye. Bye.